Welcome to e-learning module 1.1, Introduction to Research. This e-learning course enables the students to develop their understanding of the research process. I will be your presenter for this lesson. I am John Paul Peñaranda, a licensed professional teacher for English language and an academic research writer and consultant. Before we begin the lesson, please make sure that you have worksheet 1.1 and you have access to our online learning portal. Let us look at today's learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, you were expected to, first, share your experiences and knowledge of the research process. Second, describe research, its characteristics and processes. And third, explain the importance of research to your daily life. This e-learning module follows the learning framework of electronic activity, or e-tivity, devised by Professor Gilly Salmon from University of London. Each e-tivity clearly states to the students the purpose of the lesson, the task at hand, their feedback or response, and the outcome of the lesson. For e-tivity 1.1, the purpose is to understand the definition, characteristics, and processes of research. Your task is to write a 300-word essay explaining your understanding of research and its importance to your academic strand. The response is for you to provide feedback on your classmates' essay through a peer review. And the expected outcome is for you to be able to formulate a research question and explain why it is considered a good research question. Now, let us have a quick review of your stored knowledge about research. I know in the past you might have been asked to perform a quick research during your previous classes when you were in junior high school, or you might have encountered the word research in books and articles that you have read and videos that you have watched before. So when you think about the question, what is research? What comes into your mind? In answering this question, please refer to worksheet 1.1 activity A. You have 2 minutes to complete this activity. Let us look into the possible answers you might have written in your worksheet. Kindly compare your answers to the answers I'm going to present on this slide and see if you have responded similarly. So a few of you might say that research is about gathering data, or it involves browsing books and resources. Some of you might have answered that research requires conducting surveys or experimenting. Some of you might have written research focuses on finding a solution and testing a hypothesis, right? So all of these responses that you are seeing in this slide are correct responses. They are all under the umbrella of research. However, if we wanted to get a more definitive understanding of what research is, we need to look into some of its description according to research experts. First, we have a definition by Rob Denny. Rob Denny is an expert in the field of social science research. According to him, research is collecting information about the world and using that information to answer a question. In its simplest form, we can say collecting information to answer a question. And these answers to questions, according to him, in the field of social science can either be A, an explanation, or B, offer a solution. So, for example, a research about the underlying reasons Filipinos do not purchase health insurance can provide an explanation of the Filipino culture as consumers. On the other hand, a research about poverty and the challenges faced by the poorest sector can help us formulate solution so that we can alleviate their situation. With the following examples, we are able to see the different end goals that can be achieved through research. Next, let us look into a definition by Michael Hutt, a professor of contemporary literature and translation in University of London. He said that research is about finding out stuff that are not explored sufficiently and telling people about it. Here, in this definition, I wanted to emphasize on finding out and telling people. He posits a similar definition by Rob Denny about a research being a process of discovery, but he highlighted the importance of the people you wanted to tell what the research is all about. In this definition, we wanted to emphasize on the people, or as we can refer to them, the audience of the research. When we are conducting a study, it is done by observing and collecting data from a small exclusive group of population. However, when we are reporting the data that we have gathered or we are writing about it, we have to make sure that the perspective we are showing is something the global community can relate to. Meaning, we have to consider factors and variables that are present almost everywhere. So, for example, we wanted to conduct a research focusing on the senior high school students of La Salle College, Antipolo. We can conduct research about the students' study habits, but not about their impression of the school campus. Why? Because the school campus or their impression of that is something exclusively available only to them by the students, the teachers, the faculty members. It is something that is not available to people from the outside on a global scale. But study habits, we can focus on that because it is something that is universal. Every student has their own study habits. So, whenever we are filtering our research study, we must ensure that it is something that can be understood in a macro level. Lastly, we have a definition by Sandra Halperin. She is the author of the book Political Research Method and Practical Writing. So she defines research as a systematic inquiry on issues of contemporary significance in order to understand the world. Let us dive deeper into that definition. There are three important elements that she mentioned. Number one, it is a systematic inquiry, meaning we follow a methodical approach in conducting the research. We start and end the research in an organized manner. The second element she mentioned is that the research tackles issues of contemporary significance. So, what do we mean by that? It only means that the research topic is something that must matter to a given set of population. It must be something that is pertinent, that is, it is relevant at a specific point or period of time. And last, the third element she mentioned is that the research should give us understanding of the world. So similar with the first definition we have discussed with Rob Denny, this understanding of the world, according to Sarah, can serve three purposes. A, it can explain a phenomena. B, it can solve a new problem. Or C, it can improve an existing solution to an old problem. So this definition by Halperin is a concise and an almost complete introduction of what research is. Now that you have a good understanding of what research is, we can now discuss the research process. In its most basic structure, there are three main stages of the research process. We begin with formulating a question, and then we continue with the process of collecting data. And lastly, we end by delivering the data to an audience. As you can see here, although there are only three stages, the research process is actually a cycle because as years progresses and as we acquire a deeper knowledge and discover a wider understanding of the real world, the physical world, we have to go back and reevaluate the existing bodies of research and identify where can we improve, what must be improved, what has changed, what is no longer relevant. So looking into those things, we have to go back to the beginning and then redo the research process all over again so that we can improve on it. And I know there are three stages, but in this e-learning module, we will only focus on the first stage of the research process. The other two has a corresponding activity with them. To further expound on the first stage of the research process, that is formulating a research question, we have to understand that there are three main attributes that we have to consider whenever we formulate a research question. So the first attribute is that the question must be something significant. As I have mentioned earlier from the definition of Sarah, uh, it is significant in a way that it should matter to either me, you, or anybody. That is why we are researching about it. It is something that needs to be talked about. It is something that needs to be explored because it has some weight of importance or relevance. Secondly, the attribute that we have to consider is that the research question must be researchable. What do we mean when we say researchable? So it is something that can be answered through the research process. Also, there must be an end to it at some point. It is not something that is too broad because that would be impossible to collect data, or it's not something that is too narrow that there are no available resources that we can gather data from. And lastly, the last attribute of a research that we have to consider is that the research question should have no definitive answer yet. If you ask a question and you can read through books and articles and pinpoint a perspective you want to present, and that addresses the research question definitively, then that is not research. That is simply, in its most basic sense, essay writing. So, when we are formulating the research question, it must be something that explores something new. It could be a new perspective, or a different variable, or another approach, but we always have to make sure that we are bringing something novel to the table and we are not just recreating and redoing the same research. So, to give you a clear example, let us look into this research question. What is the impact of implementing strict lockdown measures to the number of positive cases of COVID-19? So, if we are going to review and check if this research question follows the attributes of a good research question, we can first ask, is this question relevant? So, looking into it, certainly it is relevant. It is something each of us, every Filipino, or every people from all around the world is facing right now. So, of course, it really is relevant. Second attribute, is it researchable? Yes, of course it is. So we can conduct surveys, we can interpret available data and analyze it, and we can come up with an explanation of the impact of strict lockdown measures to the positivity rate of COVID-19 cases. So we can get a definitive outcome through following a research process. So it is researchable. And lastly, is it something that is not definitively answered? Although we do have articles about it, we have articles talking about the impact of lockdown and whatnot. There is really no comprehensive study that would provide us an exact explanation of the impact of lockdown. Therefore, we can say that it is not definitively answered yet. So we can see that this research question, what is the impact of implementing strict lockdown measures to the number of positive cases of COVID-19, is a good research question because it exhibits all three attributes of a good research question. Now, to test your understanding of these three attributes of a research question, please evaluate this question. How does online classes affect the learning of the students? So, do you think this research question exhibits the attributes? Why or why not? You have 2 minutes to think about your answer. And you may write your answer and provide your response in our online learning portal. In order to fulfill the task and the outcome of eTVT 1.1, please bring out your worksheet 1.1 and accomplish Part B and Part C. For Part B, kindly write a 300-word essay answering the question, what is research? And how can you utilize your understanding of research in your chosen academic strand? If you chose STEM, how does research contribute to your academic strand? If you chose ABM or UMS or GAS, or if you chose sports track, or holistically as a person, how can you utilize your understanding of research in your chosen academic strand? Kindly provide your answer in the 300-word essay that you will be writing. And then for part C, formulate a research question about a topic of your choice and explain briefly why you think it is a good research question. Please upload your responses once you're done answering part B and C to our online learning portal, and each of you will need to evaluate a work of your classmate, and you have to provide a 50-word feedback following the rubric available in the portal, okay? If you have any question regarding the topic about the things that we have covered today, kindly raise your question now so that we can bridge the gap between the knowledge, or you can send me a direct message through our online learning portal. And you can always refer to the presentation that I will be sending on your email, okay?